Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to Cyber Underground. How are you doing today, Craig?
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. We've got a special guest today, Nick B. How you been, buddy?
I'm really good. And you called me special. How nice of you.
Yes. We always have special guests on this podcast, mate.
I'm not special. I'm special in other ways.
Hey, guys, I got you guys on to speak a little bit about AI. There's so much hype going on about it. Give people some contextualized information. And Nick, you just recently wrote a book. You're an author. It's on Amazon. Tell us a little bit about that, mate.
Yeah, so I think it's allegedly wrote a book. So the story goes like this. It's quite a fun one. CompTIA asked me to go and sit on a panel and talk about what's going on with ChatGPT. And I thought, well, I can't go to a CompTIA event empty-handed. So it was a Thursday morning. I was in the shower and thought, I'll write a book. And so I got out of the shower, got dressed, sat in front of my laptop, said to ChatGPT, hey, I'm giving a presentation. I'd like to write a book. Can you help? And it wrote the outline. And I went, that's cool. Can you write chapter 1? And by the time I'd finished at lunchtime, I had a book ready to go, uploaded it to Amazon, set it up on Kindle Direct Publishing. And by Sunday lunchtime, I had physical copies of my book in my hands, which I gave out at the event. So however, GPT and things, there's lots of interesting things going on, especially with copyright. So I then had to write more than 50% of the book myself in order for me to claim Australian copyright. But there you go.
We have confirmed the question, which is it hype or is it something more? And I think that we answered that it's more.
It's definitely more. It's definitely more.
That's just one example.
Exactly. It was quite interesting. You talk about hype. I was actually going to bring it into the conversation we're going to bring in, like the news in the last month or so. $100 million invested by AWS in AI. Accenture, $3 billion. And the market's supposed to be 1.06 trillion by 2028. So the question that I was going to ask is the hype real or it isn't? It is real.
Yeah, so I was just going to say I'm at an event with a whole bunch of CIOs today, and out of 20 presentations, 10 are talking about AI.
Right.
I'm presenting in Bangkok next week. What's the topic of every speaker?
AI. Right. But the interesting thing about this, you have to have the hype cycle real. If not, things don't really happen. Because you need almost a critical mass of people of interest for things to occur. And I think that's happening right now.
It's happened 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you think ChatGPT in its first 2 months of operation had 100 million subscribed users. That's the fastest growing technology of any technology known to humankind. That type of explosive growth is meaning, and when we talk about the hype cycle, for a lot of people, they go, oh, this is new and exciting. It's not new at all. They were talking about this in the 50s. It's gone through what they call the AI winters. It's gone through its bottom of the trough of disillusionment. I think really now AI is in so many things we don't know it's in. I think AI and machine learning are really mainstream technologies. And they're really seeing mass consumer adoption now rather than adoption in various areas of business where they've been for a while.
Yeah, and many of us in technology have been using it for content creation for a long time. Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, those things are great tools. And from a cybersecurity angle, it's nothing new. AI has been used and proven out as a legit technology that's used for, hacking and all that wonderful stuff.
And yet you get vendors who are using it to do the other side of the equation in cybersecurity. So you see presentations by the big security vendors where they're talking about how they've been using AI for 10, 15 years.
RSA the same.
To correlate incidences, not just malware, but things across the different stack of your SIEM and other tools. AI is everywhere.
And do you think that AI is everywhere because everyone's interested? I mean, ChatGPT was probably the first tool that everyone could just jump on and go, hey, it's free and I can do it. So everyone's like, oh, it's not that hard. And it became real for people.
I think in many respects, it's realizing a promise that was made around computers and the internet in the 90s. It's now actually made technology accessible, usable, just using the English language or the language of your choice, and allowing you to do a lot more with a lot less knowledge. The skills and barriers to entry went from here to here. And that whole theme permeates across everything from cyber threats, cyber defense, and then content creation, right?
Yeah, and it's everywhere. So I think the effect we're seeing with ChatGPT specifically is that accessibility, right? Anybody who can type can work with ChatGPT, and before long, anybody who can talk and listen will be able to work with that tech, and it's proving useful in every facet of business and life. So yes, it's seeing huge adoption, but you're dead right, Craig. We were promised this, you say the 90s, I think we were promised this a lot earlier than that if you watch the Jetsons and Star Trek. But that stuff's really becoming real incredibly fast now, and that's exciting. And they're now describing it, if you probably as old as me, you'll remember the move from mainframes to distributed computing, and from distributed computing to the cloud. This is the next revolution of technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can I ask you, gentlemen, you know how there's like a bell curve where you go, the innovators are 2.5%, and you got the early adopters, early majority and late majority and laggards. Where do you think we are in that cycle at the moment? Are we still in like early adopters or
Early days still.
Yeah.
Based on the transformative, and I mean that in a funny way because it's transforms that have really made the technology sing. We're at the start. This is just beginning. It's been an explosion, and it's been, as Nick mentioned, it's been a steady curve over the years, and now it's just.
Yeah, so I think it's that kind of, are we early adopters, are we laggards? While the technology is at a really early stage, right? This is the beginning of the journey, not the end. The end users, and there's 1 billion users of ChatGPT. That's an eighth of the world's population. That's a crazy number for adoption of any tech. I'm sure, any of us in the industry would love to see our technology adopted by 1 billion users. That'd be super cool, right? Yeah. So that means it's hitting people that traditionally were laggards. And I'm sure in our interactions just outside of our industry, I'm seeing teachers pick it up. I'm seeing accountants pick it up. I'm seeing doctors, people who traditionally really don't give a damn about technology are now using this to do all sorts of things.
Yeah. Magical things, amazing things with very little skill to do it. And that on the threat side of things, cybersecurity is where I'm at. You have your typical script kiddie who is picking this up and turning into a more potent hacker as a result.
Absolutely. Team, I want to, because you guys are quite learned and I ask the questions here, a lot of the times, probably a couple of years ago, people were talking about robotic process automation. And I always thought that as machine learning. You give parameters, it sort of learns very slowly against the data sets, and you go and do what you have to do, versus artificial intelligence, which it sort of starts to think about things for itself. What do you think are the distinct differences, and where do you think people should start? I mean, ChatGPT, we say it's generative, right? So it's looking after data sets and you're looking at things. But if you're looking from a business perspective, where should you enter? Is it the machine learning side? So it's probably more apt to a certain subset of activities, or artificial intelligence, where it's just let's go full bore and see where we end up.
Well, we need to define the difference between machine learning and AI. AI is a superset of machine learning. Machine learning solves certain problems in a certain way. Basically weighted averages or statistical averages based on a whole multivariable calculation. It's taking all of the variables into account and then creating kind of a baseline around them. That's what a machine learning effectively does under the covers. But to actually answer your question, Tony, I think a lot of the executives who are looking at this in terms of technology, they don't really need to know all of the mathematical innards and definitions, the semantics. What they need to know is about what the results are. And if they're looking for automation, obviously, the great umbrella called AI can be applied in that direction. So they don't need to know all about the innards. Defer to you, Nick.
Yeah, so I'd agree with that. I think it's important to set some boundaries, and Craig did really well with that. I think machine learning is a computer program that will learn from data and start predicting outcomes given other bits of that data. It's the underlying tech that gives us things like ChatGPT. AI is a computer program which pretends to have intelligence. ChatGPT is one of those. It's been trained. If you think about it, they reckon the human in the course of your lifetime will hear I think 1 billion words you'll hear in the course of your lifetime. And GPT-4 has been trained on 4 billion of those. So if you take a subset of our human brain, which is the language model, GPT-4 is already eclipsing what humans could do at a vast cost, by the way. This stuff is eye-wateringly expensive to make it do what it's doing. However, machine learning is used in all sorts of things, from predicting, there's examples from carsales.com.au in Australia where they use machine learning to predict the price of a car from a photo. There's Netflix, which will recommend things to you. That's machine learning. It's in all sorts of tech, self-driving cars, machine learning. ChatGPT, AI. It's crossed the Rubicon and almost feels like it has intelligence, but it's just a big statistical model.
All right. Right.
So if an executive needs to look at one or the other, it's more like, well, I need to look at the results. I need to look at what I need to be doing as an organization. Is it automation? Is it predictive algorithms? The tech underneath matters less. The results matter more.
Yeah, I like what you said, Nick. It's exorbitantly expensive. Now, I know that me and Craig, we've talked about quantum computing for quite some time. Do you think AI cross quantum computing will keep that cost down, or just speed up and the cost will still be up there?
Quantum computing's eye-wateringly expensive too.
Exactly. I was about to say.
Come on, man.
To train a large language model to something equivalent to GPT 3.5, you need 800 A10 GPUs. Each GPU fully populated with RAM costs you, I think they're 80 to 90K each. The power to run that is about 6.5K an hour. And that's to have your own model, whereas ChatGPT is $20 US a month. So it's cloud computing really comes to the fore here. I think with the advent of quantum computers with more qubits than 4, and quantum computing is all around how many qubits I can get into a device, then there's more outcomes you can solve at the same time. That's the promise of quantum computing, and that's going to allow us to do a lot faster machine learning, which is going to allow us to do a lot better and faster AI. But that's a decade off, I think, getting to the point where we've got hundreds of qubits in a machine, because there's lots of physical limitations around that, as there used to be with microprocessors. But again,
in quantum computers, the types of calculations that it does is multivariable. That's what a quantum computer is really good at. And applying AI within that sphere is a really good idea. But as Nick said rightly, is that quantum computers are very expensive. There's another dimension around, do I run it locally or do I use the cloud? And privacy is a huge aspect around organizational adoption. And the idea of putting this all up into the cloud gives them the willies. But by the same token is they want their local control of their data without having to worry about the privacy implication. And that's why a lot of these smaller models are being deployed within organizations just within their castle walls.
All right.
But I think, and the smaller niche models. But I think as we look at that, it's not just the privacy and security of your prompt engineering or of your results or of your data. And certainly if anybody's listening and about to put customer information into the ChatGPT interface, please don't do that.
Don't do it.
Read your terms and conditions. I know nobody likes to. And if you want that functionality, look at what Azure is offering, because they have a different privacy model around that. So do take care, and it can do some amazing things. And certainly my book,
and if
I
you're
talk
an
about
organization that's looking to embark on this journey for whatever purpose, automation, insights, co-pilot, all sorts of things, is definitely enact a governance unit within your organization that ensures that the good AI is kept good, and the privacy implications are taken care of, and what goes up and what doesn't go up. I really have an issue with organizations out there that ban it entirely. I've heard of this many times, including academics. Bad idea. Don't do it. You can't stop the dam has burst. Yeah.
All right. So don't just open your APIs and let it suck all your data. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, listen to
but don't do that with anything, right?
Not for the goodness of man. Come on. We need to share all our data everywhere. Come on, Nick.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
saw
S.
one.
That's what S3 buckets are for, Tony. You know that.
Yeah, open to the world. But,
So-
there's this startups are happening like at a lightning pace right now. Like
Yeah.
in the first 3 months, there were 4,000 startups created, and I accessed a database that kind of ranks all the new applications. And one of the applications was Upload Your Life. It's like all of your contacts, all your emails, all your calendar entries, all to be managed by this AI in the cloud. And I'm like, all I can think of is it's a giant hack me sign on the front door. Yeah. So,
But a far more intelligent hack me sign, because this time it spells it correctly.
and here's the thing is that, there's various trends in technology. You've mentioned them really well, Nick, in your initial introduction, is that agile was a really huge hype buzzword, right? Agile development. And there's a funny cartoon that has agile development at the desk. It's a big box. And then in the garbage bin underneath the desk was a garbage bin labeled security. And that's the same thing with AI. Everyone's really excited to put the big box on their desk that says AI, and security is in the bin underneath. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me to give you something even more scary. Here's a statistic I found out. Microsoft released the preview version of something called GitHub Copilot. And GitHub, for those of you who don't know, is a big repository where open source and closed source projects put all their code and manage it, etc. Since they released that in November last year, 46% of all new code uploaded to GitHub was created by Copilot. And for for anyone in the security game, that's totally frightening, because while it helps you write code, it certainly doesn't analyze it for buffer overflows and security violations and all the things that a senior architect would go look for.
Yeah, and there was examples right out of the gates where Amazon intellectual IP was loaded into ChatGPT and discovered by somebody else. So Amazon employees were using the system and uploading their corporate data to make their lives easier, right?
Wow. There's always an easy way out, just whether it's legal.
Well,
Go ahead, Nick.
You've just got to provide your team with the tools really quickly. You can't sit on your hands and say, we'll think about that and do it later. If those tools are out there, your team will use it at home, anything to make their lives easier. You've got to be on top of that in IT leadership. Shadow IT is not your friend. You need to be on top of it.
Governance. First thing in place should be governance, to make sure that the guardrails are put in place. Don't try to remove it, just restrict it and make sure that people are educated. And from a content, the skills to entry are, used to be here to create malware or to create polymorphic code that writes itself, right? The skills were here. These things are not new. Malware is not new. But now the skills are down here, right? And that applies to content generation, malware, and coding, and script kiddies, right? And that is a reason to be scared, because when you have this type of power in the hands of general people, things can go bad, right? And we're seeing it already. So, like, for example, deep fakes. We know what deep fakes are, and we've been seeing deep fakes for years, but only recently have those deep fakes been applied from a computer hacking perspective. And so there's this dude in the UK who decided to use the 11 Labs AI voice creator. And what he did was he created a replica of his own voice and was able to fool Lloyds Bank, which is a wealth bank in the UK doing what wealth banks do. So they had voice verification system to conduct a transaction. He used a voice AI to fool Lloyds Bank, right? And there is a very, very large organization in Australia dealing with medical things that does voice verification. They still haven't turned it off. And that touches every Australian citizen. Oops.
There's no oops in law. You should know that. Great.
Yeah, well, there's oops in cybersecurity. And you only get one chance to screw it up.
I don't know these days.
I was just going to say, there's more than one now. You might only get one, but the companies seem to have 2 or 3 or 4 times to really mess it up.
Absolutely. Team, I got a quick game for you guys before we jump off. Where to next for AI? And I wanted you to answer for me the first thing that pops into your mind. And we'll start with Nick. Where to next for AI for SMB, Nick?
for SMB, smart, small and medium businesses are going to take AI and totally carve out all of their competitors' business. I can see this, specifically in professional services, so accounting and legal and medical, the ability to take away the busy work and allow organizations, and what they will do probably is drive the pricing down to the bottom as they normally do. And the idea of a suburban accountant of 30 people will be a suburban accountant of one person and 20 AI assistants doing everything. And I don't think it's there today, but I can see that coming down the tracks really quickly in all of those different areas.
Fantastic. Craig, where to next for AI for executives, mate?
For executives, I think cost cutting is a huge aspect to what they're looking at. I mean, when you have a call center of 500 people who are doing their thing, replace them. And cost cutting in terms of development. So whereas you had 5 developers doing that thing, now you can have 1 developer and AI assistants. I think the main thing is automation. Creating insights. Those are the things that I, as a C-level executive, would be looking at for my own business. And if you can imagine that future where an individual contributor doing their job, it will be basically a conductor in a symphony that happens to be filled with AI instruments. It's that's what you're going to be doing.
Very poetic. I love it. Nick, where to next for AI cybersecurity, sir?
I think we're going to see a raft of threats that we're not going to be able to defend against. And just as simple as phishing emails that finally look real are just incredibly easy to create with AI. So we'll see a lot more of those. And we're going to have to get a lot smarter about how we detect and interdict it. I think, however, on the flip side, we're going to see a lot more AI tools used on the good side of cybersecurity to detect threats, to glue together all of the disparate tools we all use to manage things into a single coherent whole, which actually does the work before your analysts or your security team need to look at things. So automation in security, I think, is the thing.
You just stole my whole presentation, Nick.
Oh, sorry. I'll get ChatGPT to write the slides for you. We'll be fine.
Yeah. Tome. Use Tome. I love it.
Last question, Craig. Where to next for AI with regards to quantum computing, sir?
Well, I think AI will certainly inform the design of quantum computing, and then AI will be used in the context of what the quantum computer is for. So we're already seeing examples of it. I mean, we've had a major leap forward in quantum computing in the last 2 months, right? Major leap forward. And it's not just about the number of qubits. It's actually error correcting qubits. And a company produced a product. You can look at it at YouTube. It's a very sexy demo called Borealis. And Borealis actually uses quantum entanglement to do the computation. Look it up. The demo is amazing.
You're nerding out, mate. I can see it in your eyes.
I know. Look at a gleam.
Team, thank you so much for your time today. Last words for our viewers regarding AI. Nick?
I think for me, I was a kid who grew up with Captain James T. Kirk and Star Trek, and apart from the warp drive and the transporter, every piece of technology that seemed so far fetched there has actually now been delivered. I think that's crazy fascinating, and I can't wait to see what we do in the next 50 years. Thank
you, sir. Craig, last words.
We're living in the future. I mean, I've seen a police vehicle with red and blues flashing, and it was a hoverboard. We're living in the future. It's very exciting. I share your excitement, Nick. I'll buy your book. And I've been using AI for a long time, over the period of 18 months. And I've always been impressed by the leaps and bounds in its future progress. And what we're going to see in the next 5 years, much less 50, Nick, my goodness. Very exciting time to be alive. Don't be afraid of AI.
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't be afraid.
But understand it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice, team. Thank you so much. I'm going to have to get you guys back on. I think we should do a hackathon on what things people should do in business to get to the positions you talked about as part of this podcast, because I think a lot of people think, I can't get there, but it's easier than you think, don't you reckon?
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, hackathon's a great idea.
Yeah. Getting easier and easier every day.
Perfect, team. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk to you next time.
Pleasure.